back. There have been demonstrations on the streets of Khartoum over the decision to issue an arrest warrant for the Sudanese president. It's now likely to have wider implications for Sudan and the region as a whole. He's the first sitting head of state to be ordered before the International Criminal Court since it began in 2002. It's controversial because it doesn't have the support of many of those involved in Sudan's peace process. The Arab League, the African Union and the Organization of the Islamic Conference had urged the ICC to postpone moves against al-Bashir. They say the warrant will undermine the peace process in Darfur by seriously hampering any attempt to increase numbers of international peacekeeping troops there. Observers say the warrant may damage negotiations between the government of Sudan and the rebel groups in Darfur. They also say it could threaten a peace deal between the split regions of northern and southern Sudan. Well, still with us in Washington, D.C. is our guest, Omar Ismail. Ismail, we saw talks recently here in Doha between the government and the largest rebel group, JEM. Doesn't this arrest warrant just derail every single achievement that might have been made at those talks?
No, I disagree. First of all, what happened in Doha were not peace talks. What happened in Doha is a declaration of intent, as it was shown by the two parties, and that is what was in that document that came out of Doha. A declaration of intent is nothing more than a window into the minds of the parties at question to see whether they are ready to negotiate in the peace agreement. So that wasn't a peace agreement. That is number one. Number two, even a peace agreement that is signed between the two parties, this is not a peace agreement between the government, between personal people. I mean, like Bashir and Khalil, for example. This is between the parties, the government of Sudan and Justice and Equality Movement. The CPA, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement that was signed in the south, John Garang died shortly after that. Did the CPA stop because one of the people who negotiated it and signed it is no longer there? So these agreements are happening between these parties, regardless of the people that are there, regardless of the people who signed the agreement. The governments and the parties that are party to this agreement should be there to implement it.
Mr. Ismail, is one of the fundamental questions here whether the International Criminal Court is actually acting in the best interests of the victims, those who continue to suffer in Darfur. Is what the ICC is doing here jeopardizing in some way the lives and safety of those who are already suffering in Darfur?
I disagree. I think the people of Darfur that I know and I talk to in regular basis, they believe justice is the paramount demand for them. And they believe that without justice, there will be no security and there will be no peace. These are inseparable. So that is as far as the people of Darfur are concerned. As far as the people who say that this is going to jeopardize peace in Darfur, I don't know what peace they are talking about. I'm a Darfuri, and I don't see any peace that is at jeopardy here. If they are talking about the Darfur peace agreement that was still born in Abuja, I think that went south a long time ago. Only the people who sentimentally cling to that because of their own interest talk about that now. The people of Darfur do not talk about this, the DPA anymore. And we've seen all these arguments the same way that people talked about Charles Taylor, the same way that people talked about Milosevic and Karadzic and all these people, that indicting them is going to threaten peace. One look at the Balkans today and one look at Liberia today will show us that this is nonsense, and it is utter imagination of the people who have no business analyzing this that way, and history proved them wrong.
It's interesting that you mentioned Charles Taylor and Milosevic, because isn't there another argument that there's international hypocrisy here? Why is it Bashir or Charles Taylor? Why is it African leaders and maybe leaders far off in the Balkans, but not perhaps leaders who invaded Iraq in an illegal war, leaders from the West who are being wanted by the ICC? Is there an argument that there's international hypocrisy at play?
I don't know the people in the West that were wanted by the ICC. I know the people in the West that people would love to see that they
that's
will
exactly
be
my
wanted by
point.
the
That's
ICC.
exactly my point. The ICC is zoning
yes.
in on maybe what people would consider as easy targets.
No, that argument is lame and unfounded, because let us look at what happened in Africa. Charles Taylor was indicted by a tribunal. That wasn't the ICC, number one. Number two, both cases that we see in, for example, DRC, Uganda, and CAR, the Central African Republic, these governments themselves, they requested from the ICC to indict these people. So, and this was shown clearly at the article that was written yesterday in the New York Times by Desmond Tutu. This had nothing to do with the prejudice of the ICC. It has everything to do with people who do not want to see truth. The truth of the matter is, President Bashir was the only African president that was indicted by this court, and the three other cases that are under the jurisdiction of this court, these are the governments of these countries that requested from the ICC that they arrest and try these criminals. So that is unfounded. As far as the people talking about Bush and the invasion of Iraq and what have you, we have to remember that the ICC is a complementary court. This is a court that only intervenes when the systems of justice in these countries fail to look in cases like the case in Mr. Bashir. I live in the United States for 20 years now, and I believe there is enough trust in the American justice system that should something like this warrant that former President Bush stand trial for invading Iraq, the American justice system is capable and is willing to do that. The problem with the justice system in Sudan is not able, and it is not willing, and it is not free. That is the problem, and that is why we have the ICC intervening in most of the countries, because the justice system in these countries are justice systems under dictatorships, and they are not free. They cannot go against the protected officials who commit these heinous crimes.
We lost Alex Dawal a little bit earlier on, and it's a pity because he mentioned something interesting, and I was thinking of posing it to you. Can we expect the UN Security Council to continue to be quiet about this, given that it's so divided over the issue of the arrest warrant of Bashir?
I don't think the Security Council is quiet. It is engaged in discussions. However, they don't have the 9-member majority that are for the invocation of Article 16 of the Rome Statutes. They don't have that, or otherwise they would have had an attempt to have a resolution, or at least put it on the table and discuss it. However, I believe the United States is rightly against it, and they might use the veto to stop that, because this is not going to do anything. If we are going to have justice, if we are going to stop this impunity, we have to go on with this case. I respect the other people who have a different opinion to what I have, but I think I'm a Darfurian. I talk to my people. I'm part of these people who were affected by this. I want justice for myself and for my family and for the people that 400,000 of them killed, and the rest of them, almost 3 million people living in inhumane conditions in the refugee camps, and over 500,000 of them already left the country to live as refugees in other places, including Chad and DRC. And as far as Israel, they braved a lot of things to go and to seek safety in other places. So I believe justice for Darfur is important. This is the beginning of providing that justice for the people of Darfur, and we hope that the government of Sudan will listen to the voice of reason. And I hope that the international community would also make this case reach its logical conclusion by delivering President Bashir to The Hague, and he should face the charges there. And it is up to the justice system whether he was guilty or not guilty.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story, both Mr. Ismail and our earlier guests, and to you, the viewer, as well. As always, we welcome your comments and suggestions. You can email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye-bye for now.